So here we are, back in my home office. The same room I still haven't fully soundproof, even after 2 years ago. The last video I made on this topic hit over 4 million views, and that video has helped a lot of people, but it's also stirred up a lot of questions, and since then, a lot has changed. Some of the products I recommended have shot up in price, and a few of the so-called cheap hacks that floated around back then, well, they're still floating around and they still don't work. So in this 2025 update, a brand new guide with a smarter, cheaper, and actually more effective ways to soundproof a room on a budget. I found some new products that work even better than the old ones, and I'm going to show you exactly what to use, what to avoid, and how to reduce noise the right way. And what's also great about these low-cost soundproofing methods is that most of them are completely renter-friendly. No permanent changes, no tools needed most of the time, and you can take everything down when you move out. First step is, well, where's the noise actually coming from? Before you even think about buying anything, figure out what kind of noise you're actually dealing with. There are two types of noise. One is airborne noise, things like people talking, TVs, barking dogs, traffic, or music. The other one is structural-borne noise or impact noise, footsteps from upstairs neighbors, banging pipes, or vibrations from machines or appliances. Most of the time in a regular room, you're dealing with airborne noise, and it usually comes through a weak point, like doors or windows, not always the walls. That's why if you go all in on soundproofing a wall without touching your door or windows, you're probably going to be disappointed. So always start by figuring out where the noise is actually coming from, and in most cases, it's the doors or windows. First up is the door, and what really works is sealing gaps effectively. Simple test. Turn off the lights in your room, turn on the lights in the hallway, close the door, and check for any light leaking through the bottom or sides. If you see light, you've also got sound leakage. Even cracks can let in a surprising amount of noise. That brings us to caulking. Back then, I recommended a basic flexible caulk, but now there's been a real upgrade. Red Devil's noise-proof acoustic sealant is a water-based acrylic latex sealant specifically engineered to reduce airborne sound transmission. It stays flexible over time and doesn't crack, making it ideal for both doors and window seams. And it's surprisingly affordable too, at around $7 a tube. Usually I don't recommend acoustic caulking. 2 years ago in the video, I didn't really recommend it because it had shot up in price a lot. So if you usually see acoustic sealant on the shelf, it's probably going to be a lot more than your regular flexible caulking. The reason why most of the time is acoustical or soundproof. It makes the product more specialized, so it gives them a reason to jack up the price. It doesn't actually mean that the product is actually better than the one sitting right next to it. But at least this time I did find acoustic caulking that is way below what I had found 2 years ago. And the difference between acoustic sealant and regular caulking is that it stays rubbery over time and that it doesn't crack when you get angry and you slam the door. I'm sure that never happens. Well, if it does happen, it won't crack, leaving a gap around the door frame. Clean and dry the area where the door meets the rest of the door frame and apply a continuous bead of the sealant along that entire seam. Make sure you fill every visible gap. Once it's fully cured, you'll have a flexible airtight seal that blocks a surprisingly amount of noise even if the door slams or the frame shifts slightly over time. Next, move on to the edges. A basic weather stripping kit under $10 can help, but if you want a tighter seal, a full door seal kit, usually around $40, is a better option. I tested one in a previous video and it did a much better job sealing the top and sides of the door compared to regular weather stripping. Finally, tackle the biggest weak spot, the gap under the door. A U-shaped door sweep costs around $10. It's an easy install and makes a noticeable difference. Just cut it to the width of your door, slide it on, and you're done. And quick tip, if you're worried about blocking too much airflow, toss a blanket under the door as a test. If airflow still feels okay, go ahead and install the sweep. What I like about the U-shaped door sweep is that it's easy to remove. So if you only need to quiet the room temporarily, or if airflow becomes an issue, you can just slide it off without any hassle. Now, if you want to take it a step further, try hanging a moving blanket over the door. It's one of the cheapest and most effective ways to cut down on noise and improve the acoustics in the room. The best way to hang it is with industrial strength Velcro. Stick one side of the Velcro around the top and sides of the door frame and then attach the other side to the edges of the moving blanket. That way, when you press it into place, the blanket seals up tightly around the door with minimal gaps. That tight seal is what makes the difference. It helps block out more airborne noise, especially from hallways or thin apartment walls. I've got a friend who lives in an apartment and that hangs a moving blanket like this on her door, and it's made a huge difference reducing hallway noise. And you can usually get 2 moving blankets for around $20. It's not fancy, but it worked, and you can always take it down and use it for something else. Now let's talk about windows. They can be a bit trickier, especially if you're dealing with older single pane glass. Replacing the window with double or triple pane glass can definitely help, but that's expensive, so let's stick with what you can actually do on a budget. First, grab that same Red Devil noise-proof sealant and check around the window, especially where the glass frame meets the wall. If you see any gaps or feel drafts, run a clean bead of sealant around the edges. Of course, it won't make the window soundproof, but it will reduce small leaks where sound and air can travel in. Next, you can hang a moving blanket over the window, just like we did on the door. Again, use industrial Velcro around the frame so it seals up tight with minimal gaps. You want the blanket to fully overlap the edges of the window, not just hang loosely in the center. That tighter seal will block more noise, especially from traffic or street level sound. But if a moving blanket feels a bit too industrial looking, you can try blackout curtains or sound deadening curtains. Just don't expect miracles. These help more with high-pitched or ambient noise like road noise, but they won't stop loud sound completely. Try to go with a single wide curtain panel instead of 2 narrow ones. That way you avoid a split down the middle where sound can sneak in. And of course, sound deadening curtain has that sound deadening in it, but I did manage to find some at an affordable price. I'll have links in the description below of everything I talk about in this video to make it a lot easier for you to go out and purchase. And I think also YouTube has links coming out. And I also have a membership that you can join. If you have personalized questions, you can ask me and I will answer you. All right, now let's get back to the video. But none of this will give you perfect silence. But when you start combining these small tweaks, sealing cracks, adding mass, and blocking gaps, you can make a noticeable difference. Just to give you some perspective, every 3 decibels of reduction cuts the sound energy in half, and a 10 decibel drop is what our ears perceive as half as loud. So even small gains really adds up, especially in apartments or homes near busy roads. And if you really want to block out as much sound as possible, especially if you're a night shift worker trying to sleep during the day, you can build a window plug. I made one using rigid foam boards, MDF, and some weather stripping. Just cut it to fit snugly inside the window frame, and when it's in place, it creates a near airtight seal that blocks a shocking amount of noise. It's relatively cheap, removable, renter-friendly, and way more effective than most people expect. And a video right here if you want to see a little bit more about that. So that takes care of the door and the window, the 2 biggest weak points of the room. But what if you've done all of that and the noise is still coming through? Well, then it's probably the walls. I'm not going to tell you to stick a bunch of foam panels on your wall and call it soundproof, because it's not. Foam doesn't block sound. It absorbs echoes and makes the room sound better on the inside, but it does almost nothing to stop noise from coming in or out of the room. That said, sound absorption still has real benefits. If you're recording audio, watching movies, or doing Zoom calls, a room with echo can sound awful. Acoustic foam and acoustic panel makes the room sound better and also makes it sound quieter. And here's the thing, you don't need to spend hundreds on name brand foams to get the same effect. A thick moving blanket on the wall, a big canvas with insulation behind it, or even just more plush furniture and rugs in the room will help absorb sound. So if your goal is to reduce echo and improve the acoustics inside the room, then acoustic treatments absolutely help. But if you're trying to block noise from outside, foam panels on the wall aren't going to do it. You need to add mass. More mass means less vibrations, and less vibrations means less sound transfer. The most straightforward option is to add another layer of drywall over the layer of drywall that's already there. It's probably a 1/2 inch layer of drywall that's quite thin, letting a lot of noise in. So that main wall, you might not know this, but drywall is not that expensive. And if you are a little bit handy, you can do this yourself for around $15 to $20. You can get a sheet of 5/8 of an inch drywall. It's thicker, heavier than your 1/2 inch drywall, and it will stop more noise. Now, this double drywall on the wall is going to block a lot of noise from coming through, but it's not exactly budget if you have to hire somebody to do it. So there are more ways coming up. But if you are going to add another layer of drywall and to take it a step further, add mass-loaded vinyl or MLV. That's a dense, flexible, rubber-like material designed specifically to block sound. It's about 1 to 2 pounds per square foot and helps absorb vibration while adding serious density. Now, MLV isn't cheap. You're looking at around $100 or more depending on how much wall you need to cover. And the more you buy, the cheaper it gets per square foot. But let's say tearing up your wall isn't an option. Maybe you're renting or just not ready for a bigger project. There's something you can do that makes a real difference, and it barely costs anything, which is seal your electrical outlets. But before you go into the electrical outlets, make sure that the breaker for those outlets, where the electricity goes, is turned off. And then take off the outlet covers and check for gaps between the drywall and the outlet box. Most of the time, you'll see a decent sized gap that was never properly sealed. If it's small, just use Red Devil noise-proof caulk to close it up. If it's a wider gap, press in some backer rod first. This is just a soft foam filler, and then seal over that with caulking. Do this for every outlets and light switch on the wall, and if possible, do the same on the other side. It can make a big difference, especially with voices and TV noise coming through a shared wall. But if the other side of the wall is unfinished, like in a furnace room or a utility space, you've got even a better option, which is putty pads. These are flexible, fire-rated sheets that wrap around the entire electrical box. Why does that matter, you might ask? Well, because those plastic or metal boxes have multiple built-in holes, openings for wires to pass through. And every one of those holes is a direct path for sound. Caulking the faceplate might seal the drywall gap, but it doesn't do anything for these holes in the back of the outlet. They cost about $5 to $7 each, and if you've got access to the back of the outlet, use them. Combine that with sealing the front side with caulking and you've just eliminated one of the sneakiest noise leaks in your wall. So once you've dealt with the walls, the next weak's point, especially in apartments or upstairs bedroom, is the floor. Floor soundproofing, well, it's tough because you've often dealing with both airborne noise and impact noise, like footsteps, dropped items, or chairs dragging. And if you live above someone else, it's even more important to cut that down. Now, full floor soundproofing can cost a fortune. Underlays, acoustic mats, decoupling systems, but we're keeping this relatively under $50. So here's what you can actually do on a budget that still makes a real difference. First, start simple. Lay down a dense rug or carpet towels. Add a felt and rubber pad underneath and you'll absorb a lot of that heavy footstep noise. This combo can cost under $40 and make a big difference, especially in echoey rooms. Next, this one's super overlooked. Add rubber pads or even old flip-flops or sandals under the legs of your bed, couch, or dresser. If you're getting deep rumblings from, let's say, garbage trucks or heavy traffics or even downstairs subwoofers, those vibrations will travel straight up through the furniture legs and amplify that noise. Something soft and rubbery under each legs acts like a cheap shock absorber and breaks that path. It won't make the room silent, of course, but it takes the edge off those deep rumblings for basically no money. Especially if you're sleeping, that vibration goes right through the pillow. If you're dealing with noise coming up from below, like voices, TV, or music, you're really trying to add soft mass. So rugs, blankets, anything soft on the floor helps absorb some of that upward airborne noise. It's not true soundproofing, but it's renter friendly, cheap, and it works, especially when you stack it with everything else you've already done. Now let's talk about ceiling, because while they're not exactly cheap to soundproof, they're still worth mentioning. If you're hearing footsteps from upstairs, that's not airborne noise, that's structural borne vibrations like I was mentioning earlier. And here's the important part. You can't block that kind of noise with mass alone. You need to decouple the ceiling to stop it. Adding an extra layer of drywall or even mass-loaded vinyl will help with airborne noise like voices or TV sounds from above, but it won't stop vibrations from footsteps or furniture movement. That low-end impact noise travels through the joints and straight into your ceiling. The only real way to stop that is by separating the ceiling from the structure itself. That's where resilient channels and isolation clips comes in. They decouple the drywall and the ceiling joist, creating a break in the vibrational path. Now, it's not cheap and it usually requires opening things up, but if you're a homeowner and you're serious about cutting footstep noise, it's the most effective way. And the reason why I mentioned it in a cheap budget video is because if somebody mentions something to you, anything other than decoupling to get rid of those footstep noise, don't waste your money, don't listen to them. And if you're renting or not ready for construction, focus on absorbing echoes inside your room and sealing any visible gaps at the ceiling edges. It won't stop vibrations, but it can make everything sound a little bit less harsh. All right, so what do you think? Do you think these tips are actually doable for you? If you found value in this video, I usually don't ask this, but go ahead and leave a like. It really helps push this video above the ones giving out bad information. And those videos are getting a ton of views and convincing people to waste money on stuff that doesn't work. And if you don't have a question, just leave a comment anyway. Even just a thanks helps more than you think. And if you want to reduce sound even more and your budget is a little bit higher, video right here will show you how to do it. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, assuming you subscribed.